So I'm not gonna lie, when I was in study hall, was like, all right, catch up. Yeah, I agree with you.
So what they need to have is a grace period.
I keep
They
getting these
have
text
some
messages that
that
says
have
Aubrey, and
That
I'm
has
like,
all that data, knows exactly how much you have.
good to see the city is being treated
See where you're at so far.
or
I have to get this done at this time. This time.
You just have to update your contact information.
Well, I'm sure I say that.
Just call her Aubrey for the rest of her time in the metropolis.
That's all right.
Todd, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm very well. You have a good vacation?
It wasn't a vacation, but I did have a good time. I was taking Luke back to Missouri,
Okay.
and all that went well until today. Huh?
You don't vacation, test should just be.
We were there way longer than we thought we were gonna be there, but that's a different story. So it was all good until this morning when he said the whole fraternity house has to get tested because 2 fraternity guys tested positive. So they're all lined up, getting the swabs at about 4 o'clock this afternoon. It's tough. I don't know what the answer is. I think the answer is to let David Fong preach from afar.
There we go.
I said, if I didn't have a puppy, I could go to Aldi, but somebody got to be home with a puppy or he'll destroy the house.
Okay, I would like to call our meeting to order. And we'll start with roll call, please.
Mr. Major,
Here.
Mr. Hudson,
You won't be here this evening.
Mr. Atkins,
Here.
Ms. Brown, present. Mr. Fong,
Here.
Mr. Feltner,
Here.
Ms. Johnson, here. Mr. Keller,
Here.
Ms. Nicely, here. Mrs. Phillips,
Here.
Mrs. Siebert,
Here.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to move on to approve the minutes from our August 6th meeting.
So moved.
Second,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on. All right, so we have 2 presenters this evening. And from the city of Troy, we'd like to introduce Thomas Funderburg. He's our Director of Human Resources for Troy. So thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Majors, for having me. If you don't mind, you probably can understand me a little bit better without the mask on, but I appreciate your time tonight, and I'll try to present some information that's pretty straightforward when it comes to state law, but I'll try to make it sound a little more enthusiastic and exciting about the idea that really what we're talking about is people. And you all know, I don't have to tell you that people make up the heart of any organization. And I'm proud to talk about, anytime I get a chance to talk about the people that work for the city of Troy and work in the city of Troy. So if I can just take a few minutes and walk you through some of the processes. I was told a number of things tonight that you're interested in. You probably have more questions than what we'll have time for. So I make myself available at another time as needed. And but tonight I kind of dialed this down to what the process looks like to be a part of employment with the city of Troy, and really what the city of Troy employment looks like to some degree. We have 196 full-time employees with the city, about 100, up to 100 seasonals. So summertime when we have the pool going and events here at the Hobart Arena, that might escalate to close to 100 seasonals. And sometimes those seasonals work their way into full-time positions as well. I think you're probably aware of the 14 elected officials that work within the city, and a couple of them are in the room tonight. And what sometimes gets confusing is you see a bunch of trucks running around, and I think that person works for the city of Troy, but I'm not real sure. Maybe they work for the county, maybe they work for the state. Do they pick up our trash? Rumpke picks up our recycling, but they're not city of Troy. So there's some confusion as far as who city employees are. But when you think about it, it's 2 big buckets. You have the safety forces, which is police and fire, and that's almost half of the team. And then all of the other departments that are non-safety forces. So those are the folks that provide water and sewer services to you, that collect bills for services that are provided. And then we have a number of administrative staff. But then you think we're kind of unique in Troy. We also have things like Hobart Arena that's operated by Troy and Troy employees here. And all of our park systems. So we have people that are looking over that. The cemetery system, the golf course. A lot of communities don't have those amenities that require employees then to work for them. So we're fortunate. Like I said, about 196. Most people, when they come to work for the city, they stay. And we don't lose very many. So that limits some of our opportunities. On average, we hire about 10 to 12 employees a year, mostly for the reason of retirement. As I said, they stay 25, 30 years. They earn enough time to retire under pension, and they move on, and some work other places. But many of them just retire and enjoy their life after a short, brief time with the city. So that's kind of a real quick overview. I didn't bring a lot of numbers and demographics and those kind of things because I thought that's something we can dive into at a later date. And honestly, it would take me a little more time to put together and probably a lot more time to explain. But I'm willing to top line give you any information that you might want from a demographic standpoint as well. Overall, principles that guide our actions when it comes to employment, we obviously have federal, state laws, local ordinances, and then we have 5 unions that many of our employees are involved with as well. And if a union has a policy or guideline, that would trump pretty much any state law or guideline that we might have to follow. So there's a number of little guidelines, big guidelines that we have to follow in order to be in compliance when it comes to employment. But the biggest one that I want to talk about tonight is because we're a statutory city, the city of Troy follows state guidelines predominantly. And the state sets up an area, one of the laws is that it requires us to have, as the city of Troy, a civil service commission. And you probably heard a little bit about that. You have a civil service commission sitting at your table tonight. It is a body of 3. Stephanie Johnson is one of the members, Craig Wise is a member, and Marcus Moody is a member. So really, really good group of business people, sound minds, very connected to the community. They guide our actions. They play a big role. They're appointed for 6 years by the mayor by statute, and for the most part, they have served those roles well. And we have a meeting coming up next week, in fact, so we can talk more about that specific if need be. Civil service, and one of the few cities that really have this process set up. They classify employees, and all that means is they have been identified to be employed under civil service law and guidelines of the state. And that is a requirement for us to follow those guidelines. But they also oversee position descriptions. So if we want to change or create a position or modify a description, they're going to be involved with that and oversee it. They oversee our posting requirements. They would conduct any new hire examination and or oversee those new hire examinations. They will actually certify anybody who then we interview and select off of a list. They will actually certify that person for appointment by the appointing authority within the city. They get involved with yearly evaluations, annual performance evaluations. They would actually help with any possible layoffs or reductions, and they would actually conduct hearings if there's any grievances that might need to be heard. So it's a big job. Fortunately, we don't have too many issues that from a civil service standpoint, hearing-wise, but they do get involved with every aspect from A to Z. So I think most of you are probably more interested in hearing about maybe police departments. So for an example, from a police standpoint, we have 2 or 3 police opportunities on an annual basis out of our current workforce of about 44 total employees, not all uniform. Some years more, some years less, depending on the retirements, as I said. And this year we've had several significant retirements at top levels. So when we have a vacancy, typically we will hire for those vacancies directly from an eligibility list that has been established by and approved by the Civil Service Commission. Now, that list is good for at least 1 year and can be approved for 2. So it's a limited time window when it comes to opportunities. Now, we've expanded that recently because we want to make sure that applications are accepted on an ongoing basis and not just when we have an exam to put that list together. And it's a tough market when it comes to trying to find qualified police officers. So in order to do that, we've continued to accept applications. But there are some requirements when it comes to the police officer. You probably heard some of those. But like any of our positions, we have some basic guidelines when it comes to requirements to be considered for a position. So for police, the biggest thing is they have to have their APATA certification, which is a police officer training academy. So there they would attend an academy, and actually there are many academies down in the state of Ohio. Many community colleges offer a program. Edison is one of them as well. So a person would go through an academy, graduate from that, pass that test, and then they go on and take a test through National Testing Network, which qualifies for a civil service exam in our case. We just added national testing just a couple of years ago so that anyone in the whole state of Ohio can go and take a test at any of the community colleges within the state. Makes it much more convenient, allows us to recruit from within the state at any level when it comes to entry-level police officers. That's a new process for us, and I think it has helped when it comes to some of our numbers, but it's still tough, I'll have to admit, finding qualified officers. So we have our work cut out for us on a continual basis. Every other position within the city has a similar qualification, and I won't get into all those details tonight, but there are various education or skill level that is in a position description that's included from the civil service as well. When it comes to recruiting, we reach out to just about every angle we can. Newspapers are still a predominant source, but we know that a lot of people don't read newspapers, so we use quite a bit of social media, websites. But since most of our positions require some kind of professional skill or a certain level of at least entry-level skill, we try to connect to the organizations that provide that. So for example, Edison Community College provides both EMT training now for fire, and they also provide police officer training. So we're connecting with those community organizations in order to find applicants. I think you probably heard recently that the fire department has set up an apprentice program. It's a program I'd like to talk to you more about, and some night when Matt and Chief Simmons can be here. It's something that is new for the civil service program recently. We're trying to open this up and allow opportunities for people that maybe don't quite have that paramedic level of certification to be able to attain that. But while they're doing that, they would work part-time for the Troy Fire Department and learn in-house skills at the same time. So it's new, it's kind of its infancy. We only have 4 apprentices. 2 of them have been around a year, 2 are brand new. And I think it's a way to get some less seasoned, less experienced, younger people that have an interest in a career path like this. So we're excited about that, and we'll see how that goes. But we try to post, and we try to get the word out. Probably word of mouth is still a solid way. If you know somebody who is a police officer, they probably know someone who is as well. And then we are fortunate that many people do want to work here within the city.
Excuse me, can I ask one question?
Sure, yeah.
I know with everything that's going on, around our country, are our police officers going through any implicit bias training since all the incidents have happened? Because I know that we have people that are I think that there's some people within the community that may be afraid of officers, and I think officers may be afraid of some of the citizens even. So are we doing any training for our officers to make sure that we're good on both sides of the fence?
Yeah, great question. I know it's very critical in today's world, especially with the timing, but all of our department just attended a one-day session, and which was a training, I can't come up with a name off the top of my
Technical.
Yes, thank you. Technical communications.
I'm sorry, Dr. July.
Ms. Lacrosse actually helped us with that. And in fact, not only did the fire department or police department attend, many of the firefighters attended as well. I attended, most of our senior management team attended. I know the mayor attended as well. So it was a good one-day initial overview. I can't begin to speak for all of the courses, ongoing seminars that the team attends, but you know, it's constant. And a lot of it's online anymore. So they can sit down maybe in a roll call and watch something online, and they track that through a training database today. So that's available as well. So there are other questions? So yeah.
Do you still get military benefit on civil service?
You do. That's an interesting built into the law. There is a civil service established for returning veterans back in the day to help find them a job when they came back from their service overseas. So they do get 20% added to whatever their score is. And so that gives them a chance to get a little higher on the list. We're still able, though, to hire from that list most qualified individual, not just because they have military background.
And Tom, I know you have limited time, but you might want to explain the statutory city versus a charter city, because that's really important as to why we have to do how we do it versus like perhaps Piqua or a different city that's a charter city.
And yeah, I wasn't sure where we're starting when it comes to some of that understanding, but Troy is one of the few. There aren't many statutory cities within the state of Ohio. Most have adopted through their councils and their commission and their form of government to establish a charter, and the council or the elected officials would establish a charter which then would guide management's actions versus here in the city of Troy being statutory, we follow state law when it comes to many of practices, not just employment, but other ordinances and statutes that the state would require. When it comes to employment, again, they establish the civil service who oversees and guides our actions. So I work closely with civil service to make sure I'm in compliance with what the state says. And that's kind of what they've been assigned to do. That's a real top line, but we're one of the few statutory cities left. And there's a lot of questions that can come around that.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Are we performing thorough background checks on the police officers? So we are looking into their history as former police officers, and is there a database for that you guys are using?
We do very thorough background checks, including internal. Our detective section goes out and ask people that they know personally on references. They sit down and interview those people, so they get a personal profile. We do criminal background checks all the way up to national levels. We do credit background checks. We do thorough previous employment checks, and when you're municipality, you have everything's an open book, so you have access to that person's previous employee file if they were working in another city. So very thorough. It takes a long time to finally get a person from the civil service list through the interview process, through the background check. They also go for physical and for a medical background, as well as a psychological background before they're hired.
Do you also look through their social media? As you do know, the officer that killed George Floyd had posted several white supremacist things on his Facebook, and these are some things that, we can look at.
Great question. We do.
Okay.
We do. Our detectives, they really look under a stone. At times you wonder, but our citizens expect nothing less than a professional when they show up at the door. Whether they are in a uniform of a police officer with a badge and a gun, or they're a paramedic. We have all paramedics, have always had paramedics working for the firefighters. So there aren't many communities that can say 100% are all POTA certified and they're all paramedics.
And then, sorry, go. How do you guys fray away from biases when applying? So looking at someone's application, you don't want someone that's going to look at it and judge off of a name or their racial preference that they put or their gender. How is that, put in place where you guys don't have biases?
Yeah, great question. part of the process, when someone applies, our application has a 5th page to it, which is a voluntary law by EEO standards. We're required to track that demographic information. So our 5th page is really where a person would fill out voluntarily their race, gender, if they so choose. That gets torn off and separated from the rest of the application. So when I get the application, I have no idea the gender or anything else of an individual, unless I'm from Troy, so I know a lot of people here. But and my department, along with the maybe the police department, for example, would conduct investigations. We do a professional behavioral-based interview selection guides. So, and I oversee that process.
So when you guys are hiring, do you have the name on there? Is that on the list, or is it just their background and their history of what they've?
When I get a civil service list from the civil service, it's only the names.
Okay.
And then if we want to do an interview, I ask for the applications.
Okay.
So it's kind of separated in that way that civil service is really the gatekeeper of the applications until we have a vacancy, and then I ask for a list of 10. And I'm by law allowed to get a list of 10. 1 through 10.
1 through 10 score wise.
1 through 10 is score.
Yeah, I think King's knows. Well, Stephanie can tell you better than me, but you take a test and you get ranked, and then that's where the list goes. That's the statutory stuff versus the charter. If we had a charter, we wouldn't have to go through all this process. But he's going to get a list of Stephanie and her comports are going to score everybody based on a test, and then they're going to rank everybody, and then that list is going to go to Tom, and then Tom and whoever go down that list. So it's not like you're walking into McDonald's and you can say, hey, here's here, here, and here. You probably knew that. I'm not trying to step on your toes. I'm just, I think it's important for people to understand that's because that's a different hiring process than what a lot of people are used to. Even other cities, it's a different hiring process than how some cities operate.
And then my last question is, how often are you guys checking in? I don't know if this goes to you or the police department, but how often are you guys checking in on the records of current police officers?
Checking in on like performance records?
Yes.
Okay, and that really probably best goes to the department itself. I get an annual performance evaluation, and I review every performance evaluation on every employee in the city of Troy. So does Mr. Titterington. The mayor is very interested in many of them as well. So we do that to make sure that we're calibrated on the way we evaluate.
And how broad is that information that you're getting? Is it the complaints as well, not just, written performances from whatever comes from the police?
We get complaints, we get, I'm drawing a blank here, but call listings.
Okay.
And yeah, so you can pretty much tell how many calls a person is making, how many arrests, what they're pulling people over for, those things. That's all on record by the police department. That's not really within my purview to look at that as much as it is city manager role and the chief's role. But I do get evaluations on it. They do evaluations actually quarterly.
Tom, can you explain promotions too? Because I think that's something that a lot of people would be interested in, and not that our hands are tied, but somewhat process-wise, our hands are tied on.
Between state law,
being the
between
city.
state law and union agreements, union contracts, we are obligated to promote, and I'm not saying it's a negative thing, but we promote from within. So it's really important that you bring on quality, proficient people and you develop them because, for example, this Saturday, we're having an assessment center for the next group of sergeants. We have a sergeant vacancy right now. So that will be conducted, a complete in-house or a set of people from outside, their former police chiefs, come in on request from the civil service. And they will take our top 5, based on the examination, top 5 sergeant candidates and take them through a full day assessment center process to rank them 1 through 5. That's how we then choose who the next sergeant will be. There's no choice there. It's determined by law and by that guideline, by that regulation. It's a very thorough process, and it puts them through their paces. But they have to have at least 5 years as an officer before they can even take the initial examination to become a sergeant.
And then, made me bring up another question. So with the training, right, happens at the beginning. When an educator, a teacher, they have to do yearly some kind of schooling, some kind of application, and they have to reapply for their license. What kind of a process is that for police officers as well? Are they doing yearly training on maybe racial issues, which is what a lot of schools are doing right now with their educators?
They do constant training when it comes to a variety of things, whether it be behavioral, communications, interpersonal. I know they do quite a bit with use of force, use of weapons, and those things, and I'm not the expert when it comes to that, so I won't try to address that. Maybe the chief could come up and give you that information probably better. But they have to maintain their certification in order to be a police officer in the state of Ohio.
And that's yearly.
John, is that
That's a good summary of it, yeah. I mean,
but is that on an annual basis? Do they don't get recertified every year?
no, you don't have to reapply for any kind of, like I understand the teachers have to reapply every year and get another.
Well, their license lasts for so long, but they have to do some kind of certification every year.
So the state in the past has asked for what's called CPT, continuing professional training. And it's been based upon the state's budget because the state cannot force cities to mandate without funding. So in 16, 17, and 18, the state required a certain hours of CPT. In 19 and 20, they haven't required any CPT. But those are state mandated courses that were put out by the state. Now, a lot of them were online. There were some ways that we could do those courses in person, but they offered an online perspective too. And that's in addition to the annual training that we require. A lot of that annual training that we require is based upon our CLIA certification.
So we are certified.
Going back those 4 or 5 years from 2016 forward, to answer your question earlier, did include prior to this year and all the information that's been going on, activity that's been going on, did include implicit bias training going back a number of years. So that's actually been going on within our department for a number of years, not just focused on this issue. To answer your question as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joel.
Thanks.
I know I'm probably running out of time, and
No, you're fine.
I know that there are a couple of bullet points I had left, if I can finish those up, and then still open for questions. But it was brought up earlier that in the process, once everybody's been through testing and the interview, then they would be offered a conditional letter of appointment. So in other words, you've made it this far, but you have to go off for a psychological evaluation. We'll do a thorough physical at that point. And once we get those results back, then you are actually appointed, in this case by the Service and Safety Director. And then you report then for duty to get started in on-the-job training.
I have a question because I know you rely, the city of Troy rely heavily on the Civil Service Commission. So who oversees the Civil Service Commission and their processes?
The state of Ohio does. And
Who selects them?
who selects the Civil Service Commissioners? The mayor does. So the mayor appoints each commissioner, again, for a 6-year term.
6 years?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
You probably get, well, because many of the processes don't happen maybe once every couple of years. So you could go through a whole term and maybe never appoint a chief, just like we did when you have one of the states for 20 years. So there are so many little variables to all of the action, and I'm still learning. There was one, I know there was a question that came up, and I wanted to just make sure I prepare for this, touched on it quickly. The city of Troy has always had a residency requirement, and I know that was questioned from the group, I believe, Prior to 2012, the residency requirement for the city of Troy was all employees had to live within a 5-mile radius, the center point in Center City, and we actually had a map in my office with a ring around 5 miles. And if you didn't live there, you were asked to move, and you had 6 months to move. And sorry about your luck, but if you're not from Troy, you're going to be limited in Troy. Well, that was challenging to recruit from, but we made it happen. You know, I'm not complaining about that at all. But in 2012, the state, and again, we're statute and we follow state laws, the state changed the residency requirement to a contiguous county. So any county that touches Miami County, our employees are allowed to live in those counties and still work for the city of Troy. So that spreads out our territory a little bit. But we've been able to account for it when it comes to response times and people reporting to work and being on call and those things. But it does open it up when it comes to recruiting a little bit as well. So controversial, I don't know, but so that's been in place for about 8 years now. That's all I have for now.
Out of the 196 and then the 100 that are seasonal, do you have any minority?
We do. Opportunity for us, we have right around 4% when it comes to diversity within that 196 employees.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
I have,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. So a lot of us here are here today because we asked ourselves, what can I do more? What have you done? Have you asked yourself this question, and what does that look like?
I ask myself that question on an ongoing basis, but being in human resources world and management for about 40 years now, I've worked in every part of the country, both on the West Coast and the East Coast. I've lived in about 8 major metropolitan cities. So I've had a chance to interact with just about everybody. I've had guns held to my head. I've been in major skirmishes within some municipalities, stories that we can go on forever about. So I've taken a lot of learning away from those things. But I came back to Troy because of the safety and a place to raise a family. And I take that very seriously. I do that every day. I take it very seriously. Some of the changes that we've made, for example, the police or the fire apprentice program is something that the chief and I worked on over the last year. We actually had to go to Columbus and present in front of the State Employee Relations Board to get the state to understand why it would be a good idea, and our unions, I think to some degree, to understand why it'd be a really good idea to allow people to come within our workforce at a more entry level, and how can we nurture them and develop them. That's just one recommendation. I attended the course the other day. But I think that, I never stop learning, and I have an open mind, and I feel like I came up to each one of you here before the meeting tonight because I genuinely want to know who you are. I know many of you already. But I think that's what I do on a daily basis. That's why I'm good at what I do. Okay, that's why I'm where I am for as long as I have been. But can I learn? Yes. I can learn from each one of you, and I think it's a two-way street. So thanks for having me, first of all.
I have one last question. Has the city of Troy communicated to their employees the tolerance level for discrimination?
We are working on reminders of that. Have we done it in the past? Yes, it's in all of our policies. It's in all of our union agreements. It's in many of our communications, our philosophy, our mission statements. You can't have to say that enough just because it's on a piece of paper. Exactly. If you don't live it and you don't model that. So I believe we are, but we have a couple of training programs coming up that I just saw on phone scheduling today. One's an ethics training, which I think is very related. How we ethically and humanely treat people. That's coming up 4 sessions between now and the end of the year. And then we also have a a harassment policy training where I've got a couple of attorneys from Cincinnati coming in and bringing some new concepts when it comes to diversity and bias to the table. And that will be for all of our employees between now and the end of the year. So I have a lot of training coming up.
And will employees be required to sign those policies saying that they agree with, that they will not discriminate or harass individuals?
They sign that policy every year
Okay,
during their performance evaluation.
Okay.
We go through the policy manual, and they sign that they've received that. But again, that's not enough. If we don't have the refreshers like we plan on doing between now and the end of the year, you know, you forget, or you think you have it, and then you forget you don't, or you really don't. So you don't have to learn.
and are there, in place, are there standards, well, you have that policy, say for instance, someone breaks the policy or go against that policy, what, how do you, as a high level, right? How do you address that at a high level? What are the disciplinary actions that are taken to address those infractions?
Within all of our policies, there are guidelines for discipline depending on the nature and the number of offenses and the infraction itself. So we have taken action up to suspension and termination in the past.
Okay.
And I usually am the person that helps oversee that investigation.
One
Thank you.
last question. Is there a way for just the, I guess, the population of Troy to contact the city to say this happened or that happened and I'd like to report it privately? Is there a system that we have in place today?
Privately. That's a good question. Not really.
Everything is public records.
Everything's public records? Okay.
So confidential. So maybe
And I-
that's something that we as a
That's
commission
what we
need
have
to
to
be
do.
considered to
Yes.
offer that to.
Even you guys.
Yep.
It would be public
It will
records.
still be public, right?
I understand it being public record, but I think that would be a good idea to allow, because sometimes individuals may feel uncomfortable with providing a complaint to, say, the city of Troy
And fear
Human
of
Resources.
retaliation
Mhm,
of some
exactly.
sort.
That maybe they will feel more comfortable going to an outside source, a third party,
Right.
to file their complaint. That's
I think of it like at our school, we have a bully hotline.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, it
Right.
probably was in place when Kane was in school. I mean, you make a phone call, you don't report who you are, doesn't record your number. And then, you know, I'm reporting such and such about this happened at a certain building, and then it goes to the building principal to investigate.
It's part of the statute.
Okay.
The statute that formed this says that we
We
investigate
will
and
investigate that,
do
right?
those. So it's in place. I don't know that anyone's ever formally incorporated it, but it is part of the statute.
Very good. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How is it anonymous?
Huh?
Is there something anonymous?
No, but this group is to
Oh,
investigate
yes.
those
Oh,
types
gotcha.
of
Okay,
complaints.
gotcha.
That's,
Yeah,
responsibility.
yeah,
I got it.
that's part of the responsibility of the,
There's an
And I
ordinance
wanna
that
make
I'm
sure
in the
that-
process
yes.
of writing that ordinance. I was just wondering if
I
it was
wanna make
already
sure
in
that
Thank
place.
you. Yeah.
So-
Great question.
Thank you. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll share.
Yeah.
So me to share.
I don't remember that.
Mind if I take this off?
Yes, please.
I'm worth 6 feet. I think other people would argue that, especially Mr. Johnson. I'm Mark Barworth. I'm the business manager and director of HR for Troy City Schools. And thank you for having me here tonight. Tom and I spoke briefly as to what to expect, what you guys were looking for, and I'm glad he went first, so he's gonna guide you a little bit. I'll start off and talk about similarities and how in some ways we're fortunate because we're not similar. We are a city school district, and in the state of Ohio, all city school districts are required to follow civil service rules unless you have a negotiated agreement and collective bargaining, which we do with our teachers and our classified staff. So that collective bargaining document rules we follow along with state laws. So we're lucky that we don't have to do the whole big process for hiring that they have to go through. yeah, we kind of have a big process as well. One thing you mentioned that the state is not allowed to make the city do something unless they fund it. I wish that was the case. Underneath the case. It's a little bit different. When we post, I have some statistics I'll get to here in a little bit. When we post a position, we have a position, we post it in a couple places, but primarily we're members of the Dayton Area School Employment Consortium. It's a group of school districts in the Dayton area, Greene County, Montgomery County, Miami County. We go up into Shelby County over to Greenville. I can't tell you how many districts, 65 or so districts are part of that consortium. So we all use a common application and a common site. So it's one place that college kids, when they graduate and they're looking for a job, they have one place to go to and they can apply for any position they're licensed for in any of those districts that are members. That's the biggest place that we post things. Universities, sometimes when you have a unique position, you've got a physics teacher opening or some organic chemistry teacher opening that they just don't exist. You're looking for that uniform. Most universities now, this is kind of a new thing, they use a product called Handshake. It is, for us, that's one application point that we can go to, and then we can sign up for whatever university we're interested in meeting applicants from, and we'll post a job and it'll go to everyone at those universities that we subscribe to. So we use that. Again, that's kind of a new thing. Professional association websites, if we're looking for, recently we hired a principal. We posted a position on the Elementary School Principals Association site. We posted things for music teachers on the Ohio Music Teacher Association site. Sometimes we get into that when they're more specialty. If you're looking for an elementary school teacher, Mrs. Johnson can attest, we post a job for an elementary school teacher, we're going to have 200 to 400 applicants. If we post an opening for a high school math or a high school science teacher, we're really happy if we can get 10. So just that. I attend, we also use our district website. That's a starting point, but again, that's our site, and everything that we post goes to that Dayton site. So honestly, I don't know why people would look at our site for a job posting when the Dayton area site is available. I attend career fairs annually. I go to UD, Wright State, Bowling Green every year. Last year, Central State had one. It was the first time if they'd had one before, I wasn't aware of it. And the Dayton Area School Education Consortium, the group we belong to, they have one every year. I go to that. In the past, I've gone to Ohio State, I've gone to Ohio University. Sorry, but I haven't had a whole lot of luck with Ohio University. The thing about Troy, the thing about when you hire people, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You want to hire people that are the absolute best candidates you can get, but at the same time, you want to hire people that are going to stick around. So kind of walk that line. You learn when you go to UD, for whatever reason, there's a channel from Chicago comes and goes to school at UD. So if you interview and hire somebody that started in Chicago, comes to work for you as an elementary teacher, and her boyfriend back in Chicago, that's a strong pull. Tom mentioned that most of their resignations are for reasons of retirement. I would say 2/3 of ours are for retirement, and 1/3 we get that girlfriend who's fiance somewhere else. When we hire people out of Ohio State, we want to get back to Columbus. They get to Columbus, and I don't know, the memory of Woody Hayes brainwashed them. That's Mr. Long, he's pretty brainwashed that way too. So.
But I've been here all my life.
So we're both successful when we hire people that are from this area. Seems we get a lot of draw from Troy, Piqua, Miami County, Darke County, Shelby County, Mercer County, all these counties, those counties around here, and we're successful at retaining those employees. But I love it when we get somebody from outside. I've said before that if I had 2 applicants that were identical, which doesn't exist. You never have 2 applicants that are identical. But if you had 2 applicants that were identical, One was here in Troy, one was from Troy, and one was from another area. I'd probably go with the person from the other area, because all you do is hire the same people over and over again, get what I call educational inbreeding. Get the same things over and over again. So I like to mix it up. So I make every effort to do that. So when we get those 200 to 400 applicants for an elementary job, I look through them all. Mrs. Johnson, it's for her building. She looks through them all, and we kind of put our heads together and who do we think looks best? Who do we think looks good? We don't have any, just kind of going off some of the questions you have. We don't have on that. We have their name and address and where they went to school and what they studied, and sometimes they put their grade point average and their references and all that sort of thing, but we don't have their race there. Frankly, I don't want to know that. I just want to get the best person that we possibly can. I think I hit about everything I wanted to do there. Oh, you guys spoke some training. I'm a member, executive board member of that Dayton Area Schools Jobs Consortium site. I don't want to brag, but I'm not bragging on me. I'm just bragging on Troy. There's 5 executive board members. It's me from Troy, Amy from Northmont, Darren from Beaver Creek, Dan from Centerville, and then there's a board member who's my counterpart at the Career Center in Inglewood. It's the destination school district for where people want to work in this area. So we're the board for that. And again, it's all coordinated through Montgomery County ESC. Marion Stout kind of oversees that. She works for Montgomery County ESC now. She was my predecessor here in Troy. She was here for 27 years, somewhere along those lines. Nationally, so I passed out, it's kind of a semi-scholarly article on hiring and recruiting minority teachers. It's not the most pleasant read, but there's some that are far worse. Out of that, our public school students in the country, 44.1% of the public school students are minorities. 14.4% of those minorities are 14.4% are black of the total. 17.3 of our teachers in the nation are minorities, and 6.4% of those are black. It's always been my goal, but it's impossible to happen, to have my teaching staff reflect the community. So nationally, we would have 44.1% of our teachers be minorities. There aren't that many minority teachers, unfortunately. Here in Troy, we have, where's my number? We have 19% of our students are members of minority group, and 4.7 of those are black. And we have, I've kind of broke it out in 2 ways. We have 488, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. We have 488 employees of the school district. Everything's a little goofy. You guys talked about some of your goofy employments you have. A lot of people don't know, but the Hainer Cultural Center belongs to the school district. And all those employees are school district employees. So I'm going to throw those 12 people out. So there's 475 people that work for the school district. And of those 475, we have 17 are minorities. So that's 3.5%. But this report that I gave you guys is talking about teachers. I didn't have it broken down just by teachers. I broke it down by people who have early and often interactions with kids in school. So the building secretaries, the principals, guidance counselors, of course, the teachers, the people that have a lot of interaction with students. So of that, we have 325 employees, and 15 of those are a minority, or 4.6%. We're not where we'd like to be, but I think we're pretty close to the national average, but it still doesn't make it where we want. That's really the only numbers I have for you, statistics. My question's been answered.
I have. So who is, okay, you said that you do not, I'm sorry, I hate these things. You said that you do not like to see on the application whether they're minority or not. But then again, you said that you would like to have more minority involved in the school system. Well, don't you think it would help if you had that on there?
Well, I looked for just the best qualified candidate.
So you're saying they're not gonna be the best?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm
Okay.
saying I don't care, is what I'm saying. I
Okay.
just want who's the best qualified person here.
But I'm saying if you knew, I mean, not that you would choose, you know, this one over this one, but if you knew for sure, okay, we do need more minority, she's top rate, let's get her or let's get him. The fact is, I am a Black mother who has Black, they're grown now, but during the time they were in school, it was very bad. We might have had, well, I know in the high school, there probably were 3. And in junior high, I don't even know if there were any, there was 1. So I would like for you and your committee to maybe look a little bit further. And if you need information about finding more, Mr. President and I could probably help you on that.
Okay. I appreciate that. I think maybe I misspoke a little bit. It's not on our application. I
Okay.
can't see it if it's not there. I'm guessing that there's probably a way to get that information.
Well, I think me and a lot of Black parents would really appreciate that.
There was a study that came out of the White House during the Obama administration. There's a gentleman by the name of Mark Johnson that he created a document that talked about how minorities feel in classroom settings. Have you ever looked at that? No? Okay. So, you know, without going too deep about the document, it basically states that there is a lot of stress related to, in some cases, an African-American student or a Mexican student that would be in a classroom that is, they're trying to learn, they're trying to take tests in an environment that isn't completely inclusive of them from a cultural standpoint. And so I think what a lot of the questions and discussions are based on how can we fix that, because the document goes on to further say that minorities take longer to complete the same test that a Caucasian would, just because they're dealing with that stress that other students don't have to deal with. So I would love to talk with you about that and see how we could help Troy out. I mean, if there's an issue.
Did you say Mark?
Mark Johnson.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep, sorry.
Love talking.
If I can just add in, and if you already know this, feel free to just step right on me. It'll be great. We just had an admin meeting today, and we have a new SEL coordinator, so social emotional learning coordinator, state funded position. And she is going to do, we're all going to do grades 3 through 12, what's called a panorama. And I'm speaking pretty ignorantly because I don't know anything about it, and I just got a copy about an hour before I came here. But it asks a multitude of questions, but then it also asks a very pointed set of questions about your feelings of inclusivity. It talks about racial inclusivity as well as socioeconomic inclusivity. So I think that will be very, very interesting. And the fact that we'll actually have this, it shouldn't always be about just a person or a position, but the fact that we'll have a position that looks at that to keep that in the forefront of us. But that will happen in the first few weeks that we're actually in school this year. And the other nice thing is that it's, well, nice or not, it's online. So even if for some reason we wouldn't go back to school or we wouldn't be there very long, it will still occur. So no matter our place of education, we'll actually still have the results. So
What's the name of that position again?
it's an SEL, I don't know exactly her
Social
position.
emotional learning.
Is it just coordinator? Okay. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, it was,
Social emotional learning coordinator.
It was, the state came up with last year, I think what it was called, some funding.
Well, first we got some
Wellness.
standards.
What wellness was, I don't know what. So there's some special funding. We got some standards. It kind of comes out of another project called PBIS. You can tell me what that means.
Positive behavior.
Interaction or intervention supports, positive behavior interaction
Positive, yeah.
support, PBIS. It's like working with kids and teaching them the right way to walk down the hall, the right way to interact with this behavior supports.
And if I can add, and the way that we should respond to people when they do not do those things, instead of always being disciplinary and, negative consequences, how to do that in a more positive. Sorry.
All right. And then out of that is this SEL, social emotional learning. It's kind of meeting kids where their fears are, where their angst is, where, I didn't eat last night. Last time I had a meal was my last school lunch, all those
Right.
kinds of things. So we can really get down to the individual level and understand what the needs are of each individual kid. She's done a huge job. I love her. I hope she could get half of it done. It'll help parents.
So she's newly hired. Is
She's-
she a minority or?
No, she's not.
She's not a minority.
You had mentioned, somebody asked the question about some training. I'm on the executive committee also for a group called the Ohio Association of School Personnel Administrators. It's kind of my peers, it's their state organization. I am the past president. This is my last year on that, but we have 2 conferences a year. At both conferences, there's a session put on by OMRC, it's the Ohio Minority Recruiting Consortium. We bring speakers in and they give us a presentation a couple times a year. And I think maybe it's something Tom's referring to as well. The federal government passed a law that changes Title IX. The way that works, that's discrimination and harassment rules of what we have to do. I have to go through 12 hours of training. I'm going through all the modules. There's 4 of them that are 2.5 hours piece, so I guess it's 11 hours. And one of them was 1 hour. One of my roles in the district is I'll be the Title IX coordinator. I'll also be a Title IX investigator. There's different roles: coordinator, investigator, decision maker, and I think report writing is the other one. So you have to learn how to write a report. So it's a big process about how those things are investigated, how everybody's dealt with fairly, and the harassment is removed immediately, and that sort of thing. We have 4 of us that are going through that training. Most people are going through their specific training. You have to do the 1 hour general training, and then if you're a decision maker, the superintendent and assistant superintendent are going through that. There are a couple of us that are splitting. They're going to be both a coordinator and an investigator. One's a male, me, one's a female. So we can split things to make those sorts of investigations more comfortable for the people involved. There was one other point I was going to make, and I lost it. So anyway, they'll come to me. Go ahead.
So I just want to give you a little bit background on my experience with education. So I didn't have my first teacher, minority teacher, my first Black teacher, someone that looked like my family, until 7th grade through Troy City Schools. And they were only assisting as a gym teacher. And I didn't have my next Black teacher until my junior year of college at a university. And I only got to spend 2 semesters with him. And that was my first time seeing someone else that looked like my family. And also I experienced one of my white teachers say that he was around a group of doctors and they were all minority, they were all Black. And he said he was surprised how highly they spoke because he had never seen that before. And I've experienced many things like that. And I do believe that because I am perceived white, by judging the book off its cover, people feel comfortable with saying things that are not okay. And so I've experienced and heard and seen a lot of racism things in our school system. And so my question is on the training, what kind of training is happening right now, like during this teacher weeks? I don't know what you guys call them at Troy, teacher prep weeks. orientations. What kind of training are you guys doing right now on the racial issues that are happening or just in general?
Every year, we use a product called Public School Works, and there's many, well, I want to say there's 5 or 6 hours worth of training that's completed. It's a broad range of things from harassment or discrimination or bloodborne pathogens. There's lots of things that we have to train our staffs on every year. This is a big time of it. There's 5 or 6 hours then. There's another wave that comes in about February, and then there's another wave that comes in about March. It's kind of broken up to be timely for what it pertains to. A new thing that I know what I was going to get to. A new thing this year is every staff member has to have some Title IX training that talks about that discrimination and how you review everybody's. Basically now, for children's services, all school employees are mandated reporters for child abuse. Well, it's kind of the same way for harassment and discrimination. Now, every school employee, if they learn of some harassment or discrimination, they're required to report that to me, the coordinator, and I'm required then to do an investigation. And there is a way in this process, there's a way to do that anonymously. If I hear a report and someone is just afraid to make that report, I can file that report on their behalf. So they have to come to me or the other coordinator, but they can file a report with one of the two of us, and we have to take that forward. So there's a way to do that. And now, if you got a complaint about a teacher, we have a negotiated agreement that kind of lays that out. We have to, because that agreement, the parent or whoever it is has to speak with the teacher. They get first attempt at solving that problem. If the problem doesn't get solved at that point, then it can move on.
Sorry.
Okay. If, just to let you know, if you are hiring people that have never been around Black people, their reaction usually is not really that good. I'm talking to some of the young people from junior high to high school that are saying some of the remarks that are made to them. So I know that you would like to get people from other than Troy. But if you do, can you make a note of this to get ones that have at least been around Black people?
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
That is the plus.
I have some real oddball questions. I didn't bring anything with me, but I've got some real oddball questions. What I'm interested in, I don't really care. I really don't want somebody that's got a 4-point GPA. I really don't. I'd rather have someone that's got a 3.2 GPA that is centered on the student and the needs of the student instead of centered on them and their needs. If somebody wants to ask me, how many days off do I get, or what's the pay my first time I'm meeting with the person, I'm not interested in. I'm looking for that. And I've got several real quirky questions that gets at that sort of candidate. That's what we're looking for.
I can go on for days with questions. So how aware are you of the school's structures, like how the setups are, what each classroom looks like? And on safety codes, referring to them.
Well, I don't know. I think I know a lot, but I don't know every detail. So
okay.
The end of your question kind of got me to where I'm not sure now.
Okay. So are you aware that some of your classrooms specifically the high school are taught with no windows and one door? And I don't believe that by law is a safety violation, but I think any parent would tell you that they would find that as a self-preferred safety violation, and they wouldn't want that for their student. And then are you also aware that that classroom that I'm talking about, that is where the foreign students are placed, and you have on average, I don't know how many foreign students with different speaking languages in that classroom, but you do only have one teacher. And my question is there any investments or any looking into maybe earpieces that translate what any teacher is saying? Because you can read many studies down the line, and I'm sure you might know this as well, is that inclusiveness is such an essential part of education. And for kids to be a part of that, it changes the whole scope of their education. It gets to that well-rounded education that we're all shooting for as educators and people a part of the education system. Is that something you guys have looked into?
We take teachers for being a non-English speakers. TESOL is the certification that they have. We actually have 3 in the district. Primarily, primarily we have Asian speaking people in the elementary grades, and we have 2 people that work with those. And you're right, we have 1 person that goes it's at the high school and junior high. And yes, that's in the middle of the building, and there's impossible to have windows. It is a legal room. This year's a little different. COVID changed a whole lot of things. I think the building's going to be less crowded. At the high school, there's only a couple hundred kids out of 1,000, but that's still, well, it's more than that, out of about 1,200. It's still 15% or so fewer kids. We're going to be able to spread out a little bit more. I'm not saying that we're not going to have to use that room, but there'll be some more room for kids to spread out. But this is by far the district that takes teaching English as a second language students more seriously than any place I've ever been. This is my 5th school district I've worked in, and it's not even close. So thank you for your input.
Okay, and would you maybe look into would that be something you can commit to, just to look into it, not to commit to, investing in it, but looking into some
Google
kind of.
Translate is pretty awesome. I don't know, every kid's going to have a Chromebook next year, with this coming school year. I'm sure Google Translate's going to run on that Chromebook, and a set of headphones or earpiece is pretty inexpensive. I think that would be pretty easy to pull off.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about the football field program that goes on in the high school? Is what I call it, the football stadium program. I don't know what the proper name is for that, but it's
we call it the stadium.
The stadium program. Okay.
So it's a credit recovery area. It's a way for kids that just can't cope or can't manage in a regular classroom. They go down to there's a victory room. It's got a number of names, but there's a big room down at the stadium across the street that's big enough to hold. And we've got a couple teachers in there, and we've got kids go in there, and they'll do credit recovery online lessons through a product called Odysseyware. And they'll get some credit. You'll get your credit so they can graduate.
So what does that process look like to sending a student there? Is it approved by the parents? Are there assessments through their classes, or is it just based on behavioral?
Oh, no, it's all run through. I don't know exactly what they have to do to get down there. There's behavior is a big part of it. But I know there's some assessments. They got to be able to do the work. It's not the first choice for anybody to do it there. It's basically the last choice.
And would you call it a push-through program? Is that the objective of it, is just getting a student through high school? And what kind of educators are there? Are they qualified? What do their degrees look like?
We have licensed teachers there. They're intervention specialists.
Okay.
They're responsible for that area. I don't know if you want to call it a push-through. I don't know that much about it, but I wouldn't say it's a place just to get kids out of the building. I wouldn't say that's the case at all. I think we're making every effort to get them an education and get them a degree. A lot of times kids are working. That's another group that's there. Kids are working part-time and trying to get their high school diploma. That's the way they can do it.
And sorry to go back on the inclusion thing, as a band director, I mean, it's a class you select. It's not one that's required. So you deal with students with disabilities all the way to your 4.0 students. And so you are forced to have a lesson plan that is inclusive. As I like to think of my classes, is we're all going from point A to point B, and it's a journey. How do we get to that point together? Some of us might have extra steps, but by the end of that class, we have to be at point B together, no matter how you got there, right? And that should always be the objective. So my question is on the inclusion issue is, are those kids receiving that proper inclusion by being sent down to the stadium? And what does that look like? Are they allowed to come in for breakfast, or are they felt comfortable enough to come up to the high school to be inclusive?
I don't think I know enough about the program itself. I'm sure that if there are parents involved, that there's some parent involvement in that decision to go there. Lunch, they're not there long enough during the day to have lunch. Most, but I don't know for sure that all of them are. If they're there, they'll sort of lunch.
Well, and I'm sure you know a lot of behavioral issues come from home life, correct? And so school is an escape for them. And I don't believe that sending them to a stadium will help them escape. That just feels like they're just going into, you know, a 4x4 cell, you know? And that brings me back to inclusion. As educators, we have to make lesson plans that are based on our weakest student, whether that be behavior or a disability, because inclusion is such an essential part of education.
I don't think anybody's there against their will.
I could go on, but
Yeah, we're fine with time. Is there anyone else who would like to ask any questions?
I have a question. Based on Kane, aren't you willing to hire OU personnel? He just rocked it.
Well, he's here from Troy, right?
Yep.
Those kind of people stick around.
No, I saw his shirt and he initially said OU kind of, there you go.
I do have another question. We had talked about the percentage of minorities in Troy, which I believe is 10%. I believe the percentage of Black people in Troy is 4%. Is there any goal that the schools have to make sure that our school systems are seeing that same equivalency? And is there a plan in place for us to get there?
It's always been my goal for our staff to reflect the student body. But our student body is a little bit different than the community of Troy.
Okay.
I don't know why that is, but we have 19% of our students are minorities, and 4.7% of those are Black. And we have 4.6% of our staff members are minorities, all minorities, and 2.4% of those are Black. I love to get to that ratio. But as I mentioned, nationally, 44% of our students are minorities, and 17.3% of our teachers are minorities. Until we can get to that kind of ratio, I'm not going to stop trying.
now, is this a personal goal, or is this something that's like written in stone? That is something that you guys are shooting for, not necessarily you have to get to, but it's everyone on the board.
I think it's an overarching goal to hire the best teachers that we can for the Troy City School District, and the best teachers are those that are going to do the most good for our students. Yeah. I can say that.
I think his question is there like a plan in place for us to actively seek out qualified Black Americans, qualified Hispanic Americans, qualified Asian Americans to come work in the city of Troy within our school system?
We have a plan in place to recruit and hire the best teachers that we can. We didn't specify any race. Just the best teachers we can. We'll be the best, most good for them.
Any other questions? Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. All right, so okay, so we'd like to move on to committee reports. And so first report would be the Intergroup Relationship Advisory Committee. So join online. Is Sonia online? No, she's not. Sorry.
She can't join tonight.
Okay.
She's traveling.
Okay. So we can, if our relationship advisory committee, because our secretary isn't here tonight, so we'll move to the community relations committee. That's Jordan. Jordan, would you like to present tonight?
I know, but I guess I ain't got no choice. That's why I'm not notified of this.
Sorry.
Committee members Atkins, Brown, Holy Cross, Keller, and Major Senior, and Phillips met on August 12th to select a secretary and to discuss future meeting plans and other businesses associated with community relations. City staff also attended the meeting. Jordan Atkins volunteered to become secretary. The committee discussed setting up a meeting with law enforcement to ask questions related to the current events. The committee also discussed putting up a form on the city website for residents to submit their concerns and complaints regarding discrimination. The committee also talked about meeting with law director to ask how to start making racism a public crisis in Troy City. The committee also decided that Major will begin drafting the language for the ordinance to be present to city council.
Start over.
Same reading. The committee asked.
Is it on?
Can you hear me?
Speak louder.
Green.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not definitely.
So we're good. Okay. The committee asked clerk of council if it was possible to obtain,
Just talk loud.
just talk loud.
Just be loud.
The committee asked the clerk of council if it was possible to obtain a copy of an unapproved resolution by the City of Piqua Commissioners declaring racism a public health crisis in Piqua. It was decided that Mr. Keller will reach out to different groups in the city which can provide useful information and resources to the committee to help them bring change in the community. The next meeting will be in Partners in Hope, 180 East Ray Street at 6 p.m. on August 26, 2020. The meeting was adjourned at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you very much, sir. So now the Education and Outreach Committee.
So that was me. So basically what we were doing at that meeting was coming up with 5 to 10 initiatives. We narrowed it down to the ones that are selected here. We just had a lot of talk about throwing brainstorming ideas out there of everything that we could talk about. As you see under education, there was plenty of things that we talked about. All of these initiatives that we had submitted initially that we decided to discuss at that meeting, just in our opinion, had something to do with education. So at the next meeting that we have coming up on August 27th, we will be narrowing these initiatives down to at least 5, between 5 and 10 of those initiatives to focus on for our subcommittee.
We would like to invite you to one of our, I think it would be wonderful if you could attend our subcommittee meeting on the education and outreach. I think it's right in your wheelhouse, and it would probably help us to move forward on these ideas.
It's the same day we have a levy committee meeting, so I don't know that either one of us will be able to be there, to be honest. I can just say that now.
But there'll be more.
Right.
Yes. Thank you, Caroline.
You're welcome.
So we're going to move on. Okay. Employment Challenges Committee.
That would be me. So I'm the secretary of that particular group, and we talked for a long time, which of course is always the case, because there's so much to talk about. However, I tried to categorize all of our discussion into a few areas. The first one was, and obviously in regards to recruitment for public as well as private entities. Couple of the main things we discussed, I shouldn't say main things, but a couple of the culminating things that we discussed were kind of the HRC, our group, coming up with a list of criteria that we're looking for as far as ensuring that there is diversity amongst our hiring with these, and obviously we're not in a position to tell people what to do, especially if it's private, but just being able to kind of, if we come up with a great list of criteria, which I know we will, then it would be kind of like a stamp of approval, so perhaps Clopay, has a HRC stamp of approval because they meet the specific list of criteria in their hiring practices. So that was one thing. Another thing was to propose, to Troy City Council a diversity hiring clause. I know we've mentioned that before, but actually formalizing that process and seeing how we do that and getting that done. And then we really looked at challenges that are faced by potential employees. And this, if you live in Troy, and obviously we do, the two main things were childcare and public transportation. Those seem to get in the way of us getting a lot of and increasing our diverse employment status. So really looking to address those things. And I've listed a variety of ideas there. The last thing that was kind of just an aside caveat is talking to the United Way, who is implementing a 211 system, which, if you've not heard of that before, is kind of, I said, back in the old days when I first started administration, we had a book, and it was a spiral bound book. And if somebody came to me and they had an issue, I would go to that spiral bound book and it would talk about all the different services that are provided either through the state or the community or the county, et cetera. Well, the 211 system is that now in telephone form. So, you call up 211, you tell them what it is that your issue is, and then they boom, 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 get you to a point where they're providing you resources. Melissa?
That has been implemented through United Way, Miami County.
Yes.
It's not live local yet.
Right.
But you can access.
So that was our report.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Does any of our, sorry.
I would like to invite Mr. Funderburg to our next meeting. And I do not, did we have that already on the books schedule?
We were gonna set it tonight,
Because we ran out of time.
because we ran out of time.
We ran out of time. That's how long we took. Okay. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any questions regarding the subcommittee notes? Okay, so we will move to approve the committee reports for the community relations, the employment challenges and education and outreach committee. We will have to wait to approve the relationship advisory committee next meeting. So do I have one in favor?
So move.
Sorry?
I'll move.
I
Oh,
second
I'm
it.
sorry, second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. So we can move on to public comments. So we would like to give those who have attended our meetings time to speak and let us know if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, any way that we can help you as a citizen of Troy. So I would like to open it up to comments. And if you would like to address us, please come up to the lectern and let us know.
I understand.
Going back to your transportation and childcare.
Yeah.
The community needs assessment that Troy Foundation just completed. Those are in the top two. And we're not alone.
Right.
I mean, Troy is not any different really than what the rest of the country is experiencing. Mental health, childcare, transportation, and the fourth one. What is it? Isn't it like behavioral, emotional? Yeah, mental health. Thank you, Kathy. But one of the things that I think that would be really helpful, and I listened out to the community reports. For me, what we are looking at is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not just the diversity piece where we are finding as a funder in the community that there's lots of disparities in it. The inclusion part and the equity part, having an equitable position within all of what you were doing. I know Trey reached out to me. He's agreed to be a part of our DEI discussion focus group. And I'm, really will be able to turn that information over to all of you to use within your, with your committee discussions. But I think that's really important to realize that, I was listening to Mark talk, and I had the privilege of learning about what they do with ESL students. And it's so much more than just with the students, it's with the families, because they are so segregated from the rest, or they can't speak the language, they don't know things. So open mind for me, because I'm trying to learn as well as one of the peripheral members. But the DEI, I think, is what we should all be looking at, is instead of just the diversity. I don't mean it just in a really bad way. Kane and I had lots of discussions about what that really means. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
My name is Deb Hogsett, and I'm very excited that the Human Relations Commission has been reactivated. I think you're doing important work, and I look forward to following your progress and learning. I'm a volunteer with a new local group called We the People, Miami County, and we work in partnership with a national nonprofit, nonpartisan coalition called Move to Amend. And its purpose, broadly and simply speaking, is to create an authentic democracy where everybody has a seat at the table, not just the most powerful. And I'd like to invite all of you to a Zoom event we're hosting next Thursday, August 27th, 6:30 to 8. And it will feature two local speakers, Bailey Williams and Dick Steineman. And it will also include Move to Amend's National Program Director, Jessica Munger. And if I may, I'll leave flyers with you. And then finally, I just wanted to let you know that if you'd ever be interested in having a guest speaker provide historic and current perspectives on the influence that large corporations have on policies that perpetuate racial injustices, I'd be happy to arrange something.
I'd be happy to have him here or her.
And that's all. Thank you very much for your work. It's just very important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Is there anyone else? No? Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to remind all of ourselves why we're doing this. We want the inclusion in the workforce, but we also need it in the banking industry, the administrative positions that don't have civil service requirements. And so we can get some people that are like-minded as ourselves, because I think, growing up, I see myself aspiring to do something when I see somebody else in that position. If we don't see people in those positions, we don't aspire to do those things that they're doing. So that kind of creates that spiral effect where we just stay the same. And so I love that the council is looking into areas that are just underutilized as just, let's try to, make a change. And Troy's a great place to live, and I think we're gonna do great things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Comment on that real quick?
Yes, sir.
That's right where we ended at the whatever, the one I'm on, the employment committee, because we had just talked about, which was really a lot of the needs and getting people to be employed. But right when we ran out of time, we were talking about how can we implement diversity in, I guess, whatever you would call it. What did you call it? A higher job or whatever. I don't want to say higher jobs, but different types of executive positions. And do we have impediments to that? Do we encourage people to be involved in those? And so I think, were you on the Zoom
He was
meeting?
on the phone.
Yeah, he was on.
You're on the phone, right?
Yeah.
So is he part of the committee now? I saw his
Yes.
He's
name
an
on there.
ad
So
hoc
Kenny,
member,
you're welcome to come, and I think those are great ideas that we need to explore, and we were just right there when time ran out. So I do think that's something we need to look at.
And you offered that. That was your,
Do I?
you submitted that
Oh,
information.
yeah.
It's important.
It is.
Before we adjourn, we have to set a meeting for our
Yes.
next employment challenge committee.
Two committees to get in this meeting.
So, yeah.
That's okay.
Got a lot of planning to do.
So we need to do that publicly, I believe.
Yeah.
We did. We did not get it. We got it. So we need to set a date for the employment committee. About Thursday the 27th. No.
I was gonna say, we had that Zoom.
Yes, Zoom call. Okay, so do we have one on the 26th scheduled already?
Yes, the community relations.
So how about the 25th? I don't have my updated calendar.
This is for which group?
This is for the 25th.
There's a meeting in the
John's.
I'm really here, Marvin. You're on the 25th?
Yeah, sorry, I know you guys are about to schedule your meeting.
Uh-huh.
I just came late and, I figured I showed up. I better, voice my opinion a little bit.
Thank you.
Who am I? I'm Dr. Juan Fernandez. I'm a full-time chiropractor. I am not from Troy. Been here as an implant since September of 2016. And I just want to voice my experience in Troy as an outsider. I'm Puerto Rican and Dominican. I know I look African Americans for the most part, wherever I go. Been in the Army since I was 17 years old. Experienced all sorts of, fun times with fellow men that look like me, some that don't, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel as though I have a pretty good broad spectrum understanding of, racial relations, especially in military combat operations, especially when dudes don't look like you and still got to die for them or kill for them. So for me, as an actual professional degree holding person, small business owner, minority owned, my wife is Caucasian, so minority, interracial, and woman owned. I feel as though the experience in this community has been phenomenal. That's just my take. I've been pulled over in Troy. I was going a little too fast, heading to a Bible study one day. Actually, passed the same road right here. Very courteous police officer. So I know, yes, I came from Puerto Rico to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. I was the first Hispanic kid, so ESL was not even existent. The teacher had to travel 2 hours. So I know there's shortcomings, in all communities. I just want to say that I was invited by the mayor, to come here and, just share my experience as an, once again, implant to Troy. We love it here. We love to raise our family. My kids are mixed, right? Eventually they're going to get the question, and what ethnicity are you, right? But I think that, just to say this lightly, I think that Troy is a little bit ahead of other places I've been, just from my experience thus far. This is just my opinion. Of course, I can't speak for everybody in here who's obviously got other experiences, but I just want to say that I am willing and able to be an open ear to hear experiences from other people to kind of bring me up to speed. And also, I want to provide, and I think it was, I believe Kenny, that's your name, sir? Yeah. Right? I believe that he said that you got to see other people that kind of look like you, that have attained something, to give you the fortitude and the want to go achieve something. So as I'm pretty confident I'm the only chiropractic minority north to 70. So I think it's very, I think it's very appropriate that I be involved in some sort of capacity or something like this, because I want the young man that may look like me, that's in junior high, 9th grade right now, to say, you know what, if that guy did it in Troy, I think I can do it. And the conditions may be better in the future, 10, 20 years from now, 5 years from now, et cetera. So I just feel as though I needed to share that before you guys set your next meeting. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, we have, at our last meeting and probably previous meetings, we've asked for someone from the Hispanic community to join the commission. So
Not to put you on the spot.
actually, we'll have to submit you to the mayor. It sounds like she invited you, so I think she would be fine, but she has to submit you to the city council to be a part of this commission.
And this is,
But-
once again, my experience is completely different. Once again, yes, I do look black, and I get that, but I am Hispanic culturally.
Yeah.
So that there is a difference there, that definitely that some people may understand, may not understand, et cetera. So whatever value I can bring to the table that's going to continue to improve our great community and continue to move us forward, I'll be more than happy to participate and give any insight that I can.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would like to say that, I'm sorry, not to you personally. I think it's extremely important for us all to understand that we are very happy to be here, but we shouldn't have to be here. So we're here because of the climate of America. And so as hard as it is for most Americans to even tell you who they're going to vote for, so you have so many people that won't tell you if they're going to vote on the Republican ticket or the Democratic ticket. Think about how difficult it is for us to talk about things that have impacted our lives, or guests that come that have impacted their lives in a very traumatic way. So the whole purpose of us being here is to make sure that Troy does not fall into pit holes or that other cities have fallen into. So we all know that Troy is a wonderful city. We love Troy. I live here. My mother's in the back room. She transplanted from Cleveland to live here. My grandmother moved here and she died here. We love the city. We absolutely love it. Our goal is to make sure that there's things that we can do to be better. There's lots of things that we can do to be better. And we as a city, we as city employees, won't know that unless you understand what those issues are. And so we have a wonderful opportunity to take a great leap forward for our city, for those people that come after us, our kids' current day. If we can all work together, try to understand exactly where those issues may lie so that we can look to address them. So when we discuss what's happening in policing, it's not that we're looking to dismantle our police department. We love our police. We need our police. We need to work with our police. We need to have a healthy relationship with them. We need to have a healthy relationship with our educational systems. And it's having those conversations and understanding that there's certain groups of people that have different thought processes in history class. And I've been one of those minorities in history class where you're talking about the Civil War and you're like, don't look at me, stop. So it's those small things, just to, and hopefully this group will, expand on all of those things. And we have a long road to go, and we will get better as a community. So we love everybody here. It's not that we're being hateful in any way. We feel that this is only to put Troy in a higher place when compared to other cities. So I thought that would be very needed to discuss here today. So with that being said, is there anything else? Yes, Katie.
And I don't know how much leeway the commission has on adding in anyone from the Hispanic community. I would love maybe that we have some kind of say in that next decision. I know that we talked about Ruby Villalobos. I probably butchered.
Villalobos.
Yeah, Villalobos. I mean, she has been in the community for a very long time. She knows the Hispanic community very well. She raised both of her kids here, and she's worked in the judicial system, and I think she's highly qualified for the position as well. I think we should at least maybe have a say, you know, not necessarily decide, but at least have a say in our decision as well.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Well, I move to adjourn.
Did we decide the 25th?
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
No, that's fine.
We were at the 25th, correct?
Yeah,
So that would work
For
for
the
me.
Employment Challenges Committee?
6:30 if that's possible.
25th at 6:30.
Yeah.
Station 2 again?
think
I
we
will
would
not be
need
able to attend.
Oh, okay, well, let's find a meeting time when you can attend.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I have a civil service.
September 1st.
I think we'll do a Friday night. It'd be like date night. I can do the August 31st or Tuesday the 1st.
August 31st might work.
August 31st is good.
Yeah, that's good.
Is that good? Okay.
I'll have council, but that's fine. Are we having council every other Monday? Do you know, Robin? That's gonna be the 5th Monday,
At 6:30.
so we're not gonna have anything the 5th Monday? That's good then. Let's go
31 August.
31st.
Or was it 6:30?
6:30.
6:30, please.
6:30.
That's the employment.
Employee. Mitch.
Are we doing it at Station 2? Are we allowed, is Station 2 okay, Sue? I mean, I don't care. Where do you guys want to do it?
Yeah, Station 2 is fine. I like it.
Change up the scenery.
Yeah.
So they might have us.
Maybe we should do it at the police department.
We don't know.
Yeah.
They might have us do scout.
Okay.
That's why I don't know.
The location to be announced?
Okay.
Maybe station.
I'll let you.
So yes.
Location to be. Okay.
Location to be announced?
Thank you.
Okay.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
8:31, 6:30.
All right. So
Great.
for our education,
8:31 at 6:30.
Oh, geez, don't fail me. Too many numbers.
too many.
And I think one of your committees also already agreed to meet on 27. I think it was.
That's the education outreach committee. To go to the transit. We'll have to change.
Oh.
And intergroup relationships advisory committee, you have to still decide what days and time you want to do. But I know the Sonia is not here and she
Right.
knows on every committee, so I don't know if you want to exchange emails and figure out how to meet, maybe that's better because he's not here.
I think that would be
right
better.
now.
I think so too.
Okay. Here.
As long as you include all the members of the email. and We can work on locations and maybe that would be better. They don't have to change times and dates.
Okay. And this next meeting is the 3rd for the HRC Commission.
Yes.
September 3rd, yeah.
Okay.
Same time.
Meeting adjourned. I move to.
You move to adjourn?
Yeah.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Have a wonderful evening.
Yeah. That was 6:30 on the 20th. Yeah, but I think we're gonna have to change it. So I think that's one of the ones that we done it on all the subcommittees. So that's why I need to, just gotta email each other and see what's going on. Thank you. At 11.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Pick a day.
I'll send out another email and just put